In the darkest days of World War II, when the fate of Europe hung by a thread, a handful of British intelligence officers came up with a plan so absurd, so macabre, it sounded like something out of fiction. But it was real. And it changed the course of the war. It all began in early 1943. The Allies had pushed back against Nazi forces in North Africa, but Hitler still controlled most of Europe. The next step for the Allies was clear: an invasion of southern Europe. But where? The obvious target was Sicily, the gateway to the continent. And that was exactly the problem. The Germans knew it too. The plan would become known as Operation Mincemeat. First, they needed a body. It couldn't be just anyone. It had to be a man who looked like he could have been a Royal Marine officer, someone who died under circumstances that wouldn't raise suspicion. They found one, a homeless Welshman named GermanU-boats Michael, who had died after ingesting rat poison. His death was tragic, but in death, he would serve his country in an extraordinary way. They dressed him in a perfectly tailored Royal Marines uniform. In his pockets, they placed everything a real officer might carry: a photo of a fiancé, love letters, receipts, keys, a used theater ticket. They gave him a name: Major William Martin of the Royal Marines. To the world, he was real. The final touch was the most important: a leather briefcase, chained to his wrist, containing letters that appeared to be top-secret communications between British generals. These documents hinted that the Allies were planning an invasion of Greece and Sardinia, not Sicily. It was a carefully crafted lie. Now they needed the Germans to find him. On April 30, 1943, a British submarine surfaced off the coast of Huelva, Spain, a neutral country crawling with German spies. In the early morning fog, the crew gently released the body into the cold Atlantic waters. The tide carried him to shore. Hours later, Spanish fishermen discovered the corpse. The British embassy in Madrid formally requested the body's return, pretending the documents were of no consequence, the perfect way to ensure the Germans' curiosity would ignite. And it worked. The Spanish, pressured by Nazi intelligence, secretly photographed and copied every paper inside the briefcase before returning it to the British. The forgeries were now in German hands. The bait was set. In Berlin, the documents made their way to Hitler himself. The deception worked better than anyone dared hope. Hitler was convinced. He redirected massive forces to Greece and the Balkans, pulling entire divisions away from Sicily. The trap was complete. 2 months later, on July 9, 1943, the Allies launched Operation Husky, the real invasion of Sicily. They met far less resistance than expected. Within weeks, the island fell, opening the road to Italy and hastening the fall of Mussolini's regime. Operation Mincemeat had saved thousands of Allied lives and shifted the balance of the war. But the truth behind it remained buried in secrecy for years. Major William Martin, the man who never existed, became a war hero in death. He was buried with full military honors in Huelva, Spain. On his grave, the inscription reads, GermanU-boats Michael served as Major William Martin, Royal Marine. Only decades later did the world learn the truth, that a homeless man, forgotten in life, had become the centerpiece of one of the most successful deceptions in military history. It was a story of imagination, audacity, and moral ambiguity, a plan that blurred the line between brilliance and madness. Some called it genius. Others, grotesque. But no one could deny its impact. Operation Mincemeat proved that wars are not won by strength alone, but by intelligence, creativity, and the courage to turn even death into a weapon. Today, as historians and filmmakers revisit those secret files, the story feels almost unbelievable. A corpse floating in the sea, carrying the fate of nations in his pocket. Yet every detail, every forged letter, every photograph of a woman who never existed, was part of a calculated illusion that changed history. The agents behind it, Montague, Chumley, and the brilliant minds of British intelligence, showed that in a war of bombs and bullets, sometimes the sharpest weapon is deception. Operation Mincemeat reminds us that truth, in wartime, is a fragile thing, and that victory often belongs to those who can weave the most convincing lie. As the waves rolled over the coast of Spain in 1943, no one could have known that a single body, drifting silently toward the shore, was carrying the future of Europe in its hand. And when the sun rose over that quiet morning in Huelva, the tide brought with it not just a man, but a message, one that would deceive an empire and help end a world at war. That is the legacy of Operation Mincemeat. A dead man who never lived, and a lie that saved lives.